previous video, I looked at what I thought were the greatest WWE superstars from every era of the WWE. And for the most part, the choices that I made are just objective facts. It is an objective truth that Stone Cold Steve Austin is the greatest WWE superstar of the Attitude Era. It is an objective truth that Hulk Hogan is the greatest superstar of the Golden Era. There isn't a lot of room for subjectivity. Sometimes it's just a fact of life. However, that isn't the case with matches, because everyone has different preferences in terms of their match type. So today we're going to be looking at what I think are the best matches from every era of professional wrestling. And because this is very heavily driven by preference, I have to let you know that these are my opinion and they could be entirely different than what you would pick. Because the type of wrestling matches that I like might be entirely different than the type of wrestling matches that you like. And yes, once again, we're using the definition of eras as said by Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is a factual source of truth. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're gonna fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's get to it. We're gonna start off by looking at the golden era of professional wrestling, which according to Wikipedia runs from 1980 to 1993. And even though it is the longest era of professional wrestling, I do think that you can narrow it down to 2 matches. And it really depends on what kind of wrestling fan you are. Are you looking for a match that gives you moments that will stand the test of time, that you will remember for the rest of your life, that you will tell your kids about? Or are you looking for just an objectively really good in-ring match? If you're looking for moments, it doesn't get bigger than Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, 2 cultural icons from the 80s clashing against one another. And yes, it always harkens down to the big slam, Hulk Hogan finally being able to pick up Andre the Giant. And when I talk to Hulk Hogan, he'll claim that he was nearly 700 pounds, but look, sometimes he likes to stretch the truth, okay? So if you were to pick this, I'm not necessarily gonna argue with you, because again, it all really depends as to what kind of wrestling fan that you are. Me personally, I really like in-ring storytelling, but I also like my matches to be good, because the truth is that Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan is about a singular moment and the lead up to that moment, but the actual match itself isn't particularly fantastic. If you're looking for what is, in my opinion, the best in-ring match of this era from the WWF, it is Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, funnily enough, on the same show that Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant took place at WrestleMania 3. I know that a lot of people have a hard time going back to watch wrestling from the 80s because the in-ring action just isn't quite to the pace of today's wrestling. So if you want a match that still stands the test of time in terms of the type of wrestling that's popular today, you need to go watch this match. This is a technical masterpiece. And not only is it just a really, really good in-ring technical match, but it's also just a good showcase of professional wrestling, because it's got all the different types of levels of storytelling. You have outside interference. Like, there's a lot of things that are commonplace in today's wrestling that are prevalent in this match. This match absolutely stands the test of time. So this is what I would go with. If we're gonna look at the new generation era, which runs from 1993 to 1997, for me it comes down to 2 matches. And funny enough, both matches have Shawn Michaels. Wow, shocker. Shawn Michaels putting on amazing matches. And also, sorry to spoil this for you, he's gonna be on this list a couple more times as well. I think if you went with the Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania Iron Man match, I'm totally okay with that answer, because this truly is a banger of professional wrestling for an entire hour that even goes into overtime, because they weren't able to get a single pin on one another throughout the first hour of the match. And maybe it's the impatient millennial brain in me, but I want things to happen in a shorter amount of time. So even though I know that this is a very, very good match and I do enjoy it, it is tough for me to want to sit for over an hour of wrestling, especially when it's just a singular match as opposed to an entire show. But this is what I mean, right? It's all about preferences. Some people love this shit and would love to be able to sit through another hour of this if they could. But me, I like those dopamine hits. And look, if you're looking for some 90s dopamine hits, you know, you can go somewhere else aside from Miami. You could go to WrestleMania 10 with Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels. Again, I told you he was going to be on here again in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. This match fucks. It's so good. One of the complaints that people tend to have about older ladder matches is that they don't really use the ladder in very creative ways, but that is not the case here. It's the pioneer of ladder matches, and I still think that they found a way to use the ladder in more creative and destructive ways than they do in today's wrestling. Sure, we don't have people doing crazy flips from the top of a ladder through another ladder, but these guys, like, they had to use their brain and ingenuity to make this an interesting bout because no one had seen this before. And they were coming up with all kinds of super creative ways to cause pain with one another with this ladder. This match is fantastic. The Attitude Era, which runs from 1997 to 2002, according to Wikipedia. Honestly, there are so many goddamn matches that you can pick from this era. Both the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era, you can pick from like one of 10 different matches. So again, I remind you that it all comes down to preference. I'm gonna give you a couple of the matches that I kind of thought of, and then I'm gonna give you the one that I ultimately came down to. We have Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, the first ever Hell in a Cell. This match is an absolute banger. We have the fantastic WrestleMania 17 TLC match between the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardy Boys. And we have, of course, Stone Cold versus The Rock, WrestleMania 17, Mankind versus The Undertaker, King of the Ring 98, and the Hell in a Cell. But I always come down to this one right here, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in a submission match at WrestleMania 13. This is maybe one of my favorite matches of all time. It is such an incredible match. We talked about the creativity that Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon had to pull out for a ladder match, something that really hadn't been seen before on a giant stage like WrestleMania. We kind of got the same thing here, but instead of creativity with a weapon, it was creativity with different types of moves, because the only way to win was to make the other person tap out. And yes, Bret Hart had the sharpshooter, but Stone Cold, he wasn't the guy that was winning matches with submission moves. So we got to see a really creative set of moves from Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, who was absolutely in his environment in this type of matchup. But not only was the match just an impeccably good in-ring performance from both of these guys, this is professional wrestling. The fact that there is a double turn, the good guy by the end of this match becomes the bad guy, and the bad guy becomes the good guy, not only becomes the good guy, but becomes the biggest good guy in professional wrestling history. It's masterful. And you're never gonna be able to recreate an amazing moment like they did with Stone Cold Steve Austin refusing to tap out to the sharpshooter, not tapping out in this submission match, and just losing by passing out from the pain. With the crimson mask as he screams his pain, as Ken Shamrock is asking, do you wanna give up, Steve? Do you want to? This match is so good. This was cinema before the Bloodline started making cinema a thing in professional wrestling.
Oh!
Whoa! Look at this!
See?
Yo!
And that's dead weight. Oh, I forgot about this.
Oh, that was a sneak peek of this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club, which is available exclusively on Patreon. Over on the Patreon, not only will you get the newest episode of Wrestling is Cool 3 days earlier than everyone else, but you're gonna get the Raw review, SmackDown review, NXT review, and you're also gonna get 5 weekly episodes of the Wrestling is Cool Match Club, which is a series where people on Patreon vote on which matches we watch and commentate on. This week, we're looking at Drew McIntyre versus Will Ospreay from WCPW, Triple H versus The Rock in a ladder match in SummerSlam 1998. We're looking at Zila and Jacob Fatu taking on Bang and Matthews in GCW. We're also looking at Cesaro versus Sami Zayn all the way back in NXT in 2013, and Rey Mysterio versus Prince Puma, aka Ricochet, in Lucha Underground. You can find all this over on patreon.com/SantiZap. You'll find it in the top link in the description or the link in the pinned comment. Over 2,000 of you are already supporting on Patreon, so thank you so much for this crazy stretch. We really appreciate your support, and back to the video. The Ruthless Aggression Era, according to Wikipedia, goes from 2002 to 2008. When in 2008? I don't know. But this is my jam. Like, this is when I started watching professional wrestling, and I know the Ruthless Aggression Era like the back of my palm. There's even some matches that I forgot to put on here that are honorable mentions. Like, I forgot to put Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker, No Way Out 06. I forgot to put in Triple H versus Lord Voldemort versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 20. I forgot to put Eddie Guerrero versus Edge on a random episode of SmackDown. There are so many amazing wrestling matches in the Ruthless Aggression Era. The ones that stand out to me are Randy Orton versus Cactus Jack at Backlash 2004. We had the absolutely phenomenal, unbelievably good Iron Man match between Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle for free on SmackDown. We had the fantastic unsanctioned match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2002. But what I ended up going with was, to me, maybe the most beautiful wrestling match of all time. It is just so crisp and beautiful. To me, if you're looking to show aliens what wrestling is from a physical storytelling point of view and what a perfect physical wrestling match looks like, it's Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21. This match is unbelievably good. And to the shock of no one, because it's the two greatest in-ring performers in the history of the WWE coming together on the biggest stage imaginable to give me, you, and everyone watching at home one of the most memorable wrestling showcases in the history of this beautiful sport. The PG era runs from 2008 to 2014, and there's 3 matches to me that in the PG era just absolutely stand out, and you can pick a couple of extra in here as well, maybe that you would have put in that I left out that I think could still be honorable mentions. The ones that I included in my honorable mentions, I have to talk about CM Punk versus John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011. You already know, not only was the match fantastic, but the narrative and the storyline surrounding this match may be one of the best narratives in the history of the WWE, at the very least of that entire era and decade. We also have the just, oh man, masterpiece that is WrestleMania 28's Hell in a Cell end of an era, Triple H versus The Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. This is wrestling. This is the embodiment of years and decades of knowledge of professional wrestling being put together in one single cage for your viewing pleasures. But ultimately, I ended up going with The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 25. Look, you honestly, you could just put the duology on here, him, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker 25 and 26. I think they're just one part of the same, be each side of the same coin. You know what I'm saying? Just like Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, it's just a masterpiece of professional wrestling. It shows that professional wrestling isn't just about winning championships, that there is more to just winning a material piece of gold. They made this thing that isn't a material thing feel more important than an actual championship, and that was the Undertaker streak, and Shawn Michaels willing to basically go to hell and back to try and win the streak, to try and topple the Undertaker's untoppable WrestleMania streak, just goes to show that you can tell these narratives around just desires and motivations and intrinsic goals of these WWE superstars and make an amazing showcase from them. The reality era, again, dude, this is weird. I don't understand really the difference between the reality era and the new era is. It just seems to me like they're all just one. 2014 to 2020 just sort of feels like one big glob of Brock Lesnar just beating everyone. But hey, this is how Wikipedia broke it down. Reality era, 2014 to 2016. Look, I'm gonna make this super quick for you. This is what I went with. I don't think that there was any other contender in this era. You could have maybe gone with Daniel Bryan, but I didn't know that was part of the previous era. This is why eras in WWE are a weird thing, especially when you get to the cutoff year, because the Daniel Bryan Yes movement was 2014, and this is 2014 to 2016, and the PG era was to 2014. Very confusing. I'm going with Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 31, a match that was unnecessarily and ungodly good, a match that everyone thought was going to be dog shit, ended up being fantastic and had one of the greatest swerve endings in the history of WrestleMania, which is the biggest professional wrestling show ever, with Seth Rollins cashing in his Money in the Bank. This thing's a masterpiece. The new era, again, I don't really know why this is separate from the previous era that we talked about, goes from apparently 2016 to 2020, and look, this is a rough stretch of professional wrestling. There is not a heck of a whole lot in terms of like really, really great matches that stand the test of time. All of the best matches are happening in NXT at this time. However, I'm not picking NXT here, but if I have to pick a big main roster match that to me really embodies this era of professional wrestling, not only is it the match, but it's the feud in general. It's John Cena versus AJ Styles. This trilogy of matches is just ungodly good, and the finale here with John Cena winning his 16th world title really is the cherry on top. I think you can make the argument that their match at SummerSlam was better, and if you want to say that, then that's fine. Again, it's all about preferences. I think that the added stakes of John Cena becoming the 16th time, the fact that the title was on the line, to me adds that extra little bit of oomph to make this the top match of this era. The Thunderdome era from 2020 to 2021, there is mostly just bad in the Thunderdome era. A lot of people have weird nostalgia goggles for the Thunderdome era and believe that it's better than it actually is. I'm telling you, this era of professional wrestling, 2020, early 2021, is bad. It's way more bad than it is good, but there are little nuggets of good, and people like to hang on to those good things and say, look at how good the Thunderdome era was. I think the one positive of the Thunderdome era is that it forced WWE to be creative, and it forced WWE superstars to evolve and change the way that they told stories, which is why I have Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso for the Universal Championship, a Clash of Champions, because to me, this is not just a really, really good match, but this was the match that finally moved the needle as to how to have a professional wrestling WWE match in front of no one, because this is the match, if you remember, where Roman Reigns really pulled out all the stops when it came to in-ring storytelling, his facial expressions, how he would look at the camera, how he would look at the wise man, he would look at Jey Uso, the things that he would say, the questions that he would ask, because you could finally hear those things because there weren't any fans in the arena to muffle those sounds. To me, when I think of the Thunderdome era, it's mostly bad, but you can find some beautiful gems like Roman versus Jey Uso. The Renaissance era runs from 2021 to 2024, officially ending at WrestleMania 40 with Triple H saying, welcome to the new era, and people saying it's the Triple H era. So we're basically running from Money in the Bank 2021 is what I consider to be the start of this era to I guess the night before WrestleMania 40. Anyways, I really like Clash at the Castle, Gunther versus Sheamus. Wow, shocker, one of the best matches of all time I have on here. What creativity. Wow, look at this, more creativity. Gunther McIntyre versus Sheamus. But hey, look, I do also think that I could give an honorable shout out to the ridiculous and also fantastic Damian Priest versus Bad Bunny at Backlash Puerto Rico in 2023. But look, it might be a recency bias, but it comes down to Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. It literally is the buildup of the entire Renaissance era finally being unwinded in front of our eyes in live format at WrestleMania 40. All of the stories and all of the narratives that Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes went through were finally paid off at WrestleMania 40. And I know that a lot of people are gonna remember this match because of all of the crazy shock appearances at the end, but before all of the craziness happened, this was still a fantastic 5-star match. But when it got ridiculous with all of the appearances, all of the shock twists and left turns, that's when it put this match over the edge for me. And obviously it's too early to even pick a match for the Paul Levesque era of 2024 to present, but I guess we'll just do this. We'll just say it's Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles Backlash. The Backlash crowd will forever be ingrained as one of the greatest, if not the greatest crowds in professional wrestling history. Il est vraiment phénoménal, la 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 la. Dude, I love it. All right, folks, that's my list. You let me know what you would have changed. Again, the nice thing about this is that it's all personal preference, so I do want to hear what you have to say in the comments because your answers might be entirely different. But that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.